Hey, what's up, everybody? We are here, and we're about to end the music.
We should keep it going. It's nice. It's soothing.
No, that's it. All right, office hours are starting.
This is the internet's most professional show.
That's how we keep it. Okay, I'm Trae. I'm from Audion. Who are you, Ben?
I'm Ben from Audion, and we have
Brad Haley,
not from Audion.
independent freelance editor.
Yeah. So Trae, I'm super stoked about this because Brad and I have been best friends for like 35 years since we were just wee lads. Brad, I feel like, is probably the person that's most responsible for me doing what I'm doing today. He helped me land a job running cam at like the Texas lottery stuff at the old 501. And then I fell out of it for a long time, but Brad, got the degree, went to, did UT, moved out to LA, and has just been crushing it. So I think we're going to get some good insight from him today to be able to like talk about some of this stuff because dude's been in it for, he's been in it, man.
I love that.
Yeah. So let's read a little bit of this here. So 20 years experience, episodic reality TV, broadcast and streaming, social, short film, infomercials, docudrama, wildlife science, Netflix, Discovery Plus, Animal Planet, A&E, TLC, Netflix, YouTube, Discovery, Max. What you did, produced and directed Magic Bullet, NutriBullet, which I loved those. I remember seeing little clips from those. He did infomercials back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But you won an Emmy last year too?
2 years ago, yes.
Yeah. So Emmy award-winning editor. Kind of crazy to get him on.
Yeah. Wait, what did you win an Emmy Award for?
It was a Children's and Family Emmy for a show called Making Fun on Netflix.
Which was sick. If you haven't seen it, you should look it up and go watch it. It's pretty rad.
It's a build show for kids and families to watch together.
It's a build show?
Like they build stuff that the kids dream up.
Okay.
Yeah. It's crazy. Everybody should watch that. If nothing else you take away from this, watch what Brad did there. But let's get into some of this stuff because the reason I wanted Brad on today was because we've been talking a lot about like the individual shooter, the B2B guy that's like creating marketing content, that's trying to like craft some stories for either in-house or for their brand. And I feel like having somebody that's done this professionally at a super high level for a really long time could really shed some insight onto some things and give people some good stuff. So, and then Trae, I want to kind of bounce some of that stuff off you and try to parlay it into some of the stuff that we do for clients, and not so much in a marketing play, but as in like, how do we relate that to what we're doing on a daily basis for people and how people can incorporate some of this stuff. So, but the first thing, Brad, give us your 30-second career arc, like from school to where you are now.
Let's see. College at the University of Texas in the late 90s, and I did some internships, and then that led to some freelance work and whatnot in production. And then my first editing gig was right after college. I started working for KI Television in Austin as a news editor, and then moved out to LA, started doing production and post in the infomercial world, which I just kind of fell into. And I ended up doing that for 6-7 years, and then went freelance just to edit on anything and everything. And ever since then, been doing mostly reality television, some marketing, but mostly reality, nonfiction.
And the interesting thing too is you've gone almost 100% remote now, right? Like you guys aren't all coming in anymore to like one big office to edit together.
Yeah, ever since March of 2020, I have been editing in this room.
Is that pretty standard industry out there now?
Well, not across the entire film industry. Reality is kind of shielded from scripted, and features are shielded from television. Kind of different industries out here. Most reality went remote entirely with post-production.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you really just have a couple of AEs and maybe a post supervisor in the home base office. My last job, my EP lives in New Zealand now. He moved there. And he's
That's
a
pretty
day
cool.
ahead 1 hour later, I think it was. So he just shifted his schedule to his work week to match West Coast, USA. But I'm working with a producer right now on a show he's in, I think, Connecticut. We've got people all over the country and the world.
So first important takeaway for people, you don't have to have a bunch of dudes in a room editing, right? Like everybody's all over the place now. This is just how it is. This is where the world is. Second thing, Trae, you lived in New Zealand for a while, didn't you?
I did live in New Zealand.
Yeah, I just want to bring that up because it's pretty awesome. Picking apples and whatnot. Also, Trae, what year did you graduate UT?
2003.
Where were you, Brad? 2000 or 99?
99, December 99.
Brad's
we
really
just
old.
missed each other.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
4 years.
Trae, you have anything before we like dive into some of these questions? Anything you want to ask him before we kind of get into some of the nitty gritty of this stuff?
Well, I just really want you to paint the picture of what editing was like when you first started in reality in like the mid 2000s or early 2000s, and what it's like now. Everyone's remote. So can you kind of like take us through the before and after?
Yeah, interesting. Honestly, it has changed very little. We still cut on Avid. Matter of fact, a lot of the shops that I work with still use Avid 2018 because
Wow.
it gets the job done. I like the latest Avid. I use that on some shows and prefer it. It's got a few more bells and whistles, but the workflow is very, very similar. And there aren't, as far as I know, a lot of advantages technically with Avid since that 2018, the latest version of the 2018 software. So we're really kind of honestly cutting things the way we used to, but just from separate rooms. What's changed is how we communicate, using Slack and Zoom and so forth, how we maybe exchange files. I have worked on shows that cut on Premiere, and that workflow is quite a bit different than an Avid workflow. It's kind of a pain in the ass for sharing, because the projects, you can't just jump in someone's bin and work on their sequence and give it back to them. You've got to exchange projects every time over email and then bring that into your project. It's not the best sharing environment. So it's why we don't use that product. And everyone that cuts these shows pretty much has an Avid background, including and most especially the producers.
Yeah, that's what I
Not
would.
editors, but doing editing.
Right.
And hands-on in the Avid. So and they're
So do you edit from a centralized server somewhere? Are you accessing that? Or are you editing proxies? Like how are you editing?
well, it has depended on different jobs. Sometimes I've small gigs I've gotten a hard drive and
Whoa.
worked locally in Premiere. And then but most everything we do is through Jump Desktop or a VPN
So
setup,
you're just remoting in.
remote in,
Interesting.
and
And
work
it's
on
fast enough to be able to do that?
it sure is. We don't look at 4K. I look at 1080 usually, and I don't do finishing work that way. I pretty sure that the colors still work in-house
Yeah. Cool.
because I don't do that part. I only see a project. I'm only an offline editor, so I cut.
Will you explain what that is to people who are
Oh, yeah.
not editors?
Sure, absolutely. So I essentially handle the creative edit, which in a television project involves everything right up until sound and color correction and an upres. So I look at everything using proxies and so forth, and I compile the show. I lock it to time. I handle a temp sound mix and all that, and then I hand off my sequences to both a mixer and a colorist who work independently. And then the mixer mixes the sound on the show, and the colorist handles upresing and all the final look, the color correction.
Don't get any ideas, Trae. We're gonna have to do all of it, buddy. We can't hand anything off over here.
And in infomercials was different. I handled everything from ingestion to the broadcast cassette tape, which was what we were doing back then.
So that's more similar to what we would do. That's like more of a B2B model, I think, the infomercial.
Yeah, where we're just taking all that stuff in. So that's how much freedom do you have in developing the story and the narrative? Like when you're given clips from a reality series or from something, are you making storyline decisions? Are they telling you exactly what to edit? Like how are you deciding what to cut and when?
We make all of the decisions up front, and then the network chimes in.
Wow.
So you work with producers on your team and other editors on a team. It depends on the series as to how we work. Some series, I'll cut scenes for any number of different episodes on the series. And then I'm working right now on a series for Food Network where they really assign you an episode and you live in that episode and you really don't on anybody else's episode. So you really don't work too much with other editors.
I got it.
You have a producer you work with, and they are essentially the story lead. They get the material before I get to it, and they kind of craft a real rough string out of a story, sound bites and the material from the shoot.
How long does that project take?
Well, it depends. They used to give us 8 weeks to complete an edit to lock
Per episode?
a
For
42-minute show. Yeah,
what?
per episode, depending on if it's just a 1 hour episode. If it's a 30, it's less. If it's a 2 hour, it's a lot more. But yeah, you get 8 weeks.
Yeah, Trae, again, don't get any ideas. We can't do this, man. I gotta turn this stuff out.
But there's a lot of lifting and involved in that, and a lot of building up front.
Yeah,
And
that's
you get
insane.
pages of notes, many different. We kick out a rough cut to the network. First, I give a rough cut to my senior executive producer, showrunner. They give me notes. Then we kick it out to the heads of the production company, and then I get notes. And then we kick out the first cut to the network. Then we get notes. Then another cut goes to the network. We get notes, and then another cut goes to the network. We get the final block notes.
That's not very dissimilar from a lot of stuff we do, where it just goes back and forth a bazillion times to a client. No, like that happens to us a lot. Well, so a lot of our clients may be working with an editor for the first time. They may be working, with somebody in post-production for the first time. They're not super familiar with the process. They don't know what we do. They just know kind of what they want it to look like. In your experience, you've worked with a lot of these producers and a lot of editors in line ahead of you. What's an important tip you could give somebody in working with an editor to make the workflow easier? Like, what's something you could tell them how to communicate, how to get across their ideas? Like, what makes that relationship better working with an editor, an outside editor? Bro, that's a dog. I thought that was a blanket back there.
Yep, that's
Sorry.
Tell us about your dog.
Yep, she sleeps behind me pretty much all day long.
Okay, what's her name?
Maple. Maple, you want to say hi? No.
Oh my gosh.
I don't remember seeing that dog last time I was there. Your girls
new.
must be so excited.
Yeah, she's new.
That's great. Anyway, the dog's awesome. But
Isn't this the dog show? This isn't the dog show.
So can you repeat your question? I'm sorry, I lost.
Okay, so the question is, we have a lot of people that, especially in like industrial and commercial video, that may be working with an editor for the first time, right? So they don't have any of the prior knowledge of what the process is or how it works. You've worked with a lot of people that are in line ahead of you that are giving you direction or telling you how to do stuff. I would equate that to some of our people trying to give us direction. So as an editor, what do you think are some good pieces of advice to give the client, the producer, the whatever, on how to communicate with an editor to get the best results and get what you want out of a project?
Yeah, provide examples. And be specific. So I want it to sound like this, music-wise. Maybe there's a video that has an example of that. I like this video. Send the link from YouTube. I'll watch that. And I'll go, okay, I see exactly what you're getting at, even though this might not creatively be what this particular client's trying to achieve. I see what they're getting at. Maybe it's the energy, maybe it's the way the dialogue works, and maybe it's music and that kind of thing. But anyway, providing very specific examples gets you ahead on a lot, because a lot can be lost in communicating with just the words, saying like, I want it to be more, magnetic.
I want it to pop. Yeah, you're like, well, what does that mean?
And if we have a long-term relationship, if I have a relationship with a producer, he can say that or she can say that, and I'll understand them. But if it's, somebody who, we're just getting to know each other, give me an example. I like this. I like that.
Trae, do you mirror that? Because, you have to deal, we get rounds of edits back. Is it similar for you? Like, what would you tell somebody that's dealing with us or with an editor for the first time? Like, how does it make it easier for you? Or even for me trying to communicate with you or somebody on staff?
I do the same thing. I ask for a lot of, like, what's something that you like if you are, because I think a lot of times we have to get more conceptual with them before we shoot. And then afterwards, it's such a quick turnaround that hopefully I already know what I'm trying to edit. When we're planning it out, I'm always like, yeah, let's talk about what you do like. Give me examples. Let's find the stuff that resonates with you. And then we'll base what we're doing off of that. That'll be our creative inspiration.
Yeah, because we're shooting most of the time to script. And theoretically, Brad is shooting unscripted, which I don't know how much the reality is unscripted, but we won't get into that because we want him to continue to get work out there. What else, Trae? You got anything? I have a ton of questions for him, but I don't want to monopolize this. And you're an editor, so I feel like editor to editor, you guys might have some stuff to talk about.
I'm excited to talk about how AI has affected your workflow.
I'm going to be honest and say AI has not changed my workflow much yet.
Okay.
And we've been using AI like products for years, like Avid's phrase find essentially is AI. You
Yeah.
can find things, find dialogue. It doesn't work great. So typically we've always used script sync. So when it comes to finding material and finding things, it's instantaneous for me to find something I need. So when I script someone who's unscripted by typing in what I want them to say and finding those things and putting them together, I
Yeah.
can do that pretty quickly. And the producers are using that same tool as well. But that
Okay.
requires someone to transcribe the material physically.
Yeah.
We've
So you guys are still sending out for daily or for transcriptions. Yeah. So you're still getting.
yes.
Okay.
A human's, as far as I know,
They offshore that, I
Right.
think. That's crazy.
It's offshore. It's pennies, so it's less than software.
Okay.
If you wanted AI software, it's less than that out, or it has been at least. And
Yeah.
I dealt with it. Now I don't deal with that side of things very much right now anymore. I'm really just kind of creative on the story. So how they make that stuff appear in my edit project is often a mystery to me. I'm brought on.
But I think this is something then now that's like, this has kind of come downstream, Trae, to like, to our level of editing or even lower, like to the single shooter or whatever, like, cause we didn't have access to tools like that. You didn't have access to a dialogue search. You couldn't do AI transcription. You couldn't
Yeah,
do
it
that
was too
stuff.
expensive for us until they integrated it into Premiere and Resolve. And so now we get it for every shoot we do. And I can
Provide.
do the same thing where if I want people to say certain phrases, I can like look it up in it's transcribed it in the software that I use. So
that's very exciting to me. I have not had a chance to get my hands on really using that. I actually have Creative Cloud at home, but haven't had any time to actually make use of some of those tools. Like I believe you can even extend shots now, things like
yes, I
Yeah.
haven't played around with that, but that is in the beta version, right? That's crazy.
or it's getting there. So those are the types of tools that
Yeah.
once available to me, I will use the hell out of them because
Thank you.
that's what I miss. That's what I'm like, oh, reading about, and it's just still hasn't actually come to fruition in the software that we're using just yet. Hoping Avid's got plans for that, but it may be that Premiere is going to be the leader.
Well, I have a friend that worked on a project, and it was a musical documentary, and the lead singer the person that the documentary is about wasn't available to record interviews for 6 months. And so he was the creative editor. He was going in and using AI tools to record his voice in the artist's voice
No.
to create dialogue that he was going to run past the artist to give him an idea of like what he thought the story could be. They were coming up with the story that way for 6 months until the guy was back in the US and could do sit down interviews.
Yeah, that's actually some kind of thing that we've done too. So I worked on a Netflix show last year around this time, and I finished it up around this time. We used a product called 11 Labs to recreate voice for some of our cast members it was a survival competition show, and
Okay.
one of the cast members, we had an interview. We'd already interviewed them. There was no going back and getting more.
Yeah.
So we really didn't have her saying exactly what we wanted to say for a particular scene, and I didn't cut it, but another editor cut the scene using a lot of off-camera dialogue only to tell this missing story that he wanted to tell. And I watched the scene. I thought, wow, how did he find such perfect interview bites to support the scene? It's exactly what you'd want her to say.
Oh no.
And come to find out, he'd used 11 Labs. Showrunner loved it. Everyone loved it. But Netflix was like, we can't do any AI right now. We're just not there with feeling comfortable about using anything made with AI because of copyright issue.
For sure.
AI models have been trained on whatever, and if you can't track it down, you don't know what it is, then you are legally in jeopardy. So a lot of networks are apprehensive about using AI tools right now.
So
it lets you prove that those tools were trained on licensed material.
So we should extrapolate this down, Trae, because I think this is a super important thing for anybody that's creating content or anybody that's out there putting things online or as part of your branding or as part of your marketing. Like, before you rely on AI for editing, you better make sure that you got your bases covered and that you're doing something that's ethical, legal, all those things, because you're just putting this out there into the universe and being like, oh, cool. Well, I can make it. Just because you can doesn't mean that you should or that it's okay to do.
Yeah.
And like if Netflix is shutting it down and be like, no, we can't do this, you probably shouldn't do it either. Seriously.
Yeah, I
So
just attended an AI conference at the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, where they're talking about the current use of AI in the industry, and it's there's a lot of people are concerned about the legality and the ethics, and there are organizations right now who are building AI models ethically using licensed media only, so
Wow.
that producers can go to them for their.
it's the wild west out there, man.
That's actually, I bet that's going to be a really lucrative business model. If you have an ethical AI system that can do voice creation and image creation. Wow.
Well, let's talk about this real quick. We're deep in the era of short attention spans, just period. That's just what it is. It's the name of the game. But you've been dealing with that for a much longer time because the way that these things are cut together, it's really made for that. It's like to hold your attention as it's like you're getting invested, but it's not like some long episodic thing where like you have a lot of time to tell the story. You've kind of got to get these cuts in. We're seeing that too with a lot where it's just like, you've got to really tell that story quickly and get people's attention quickly. So when you're looking at things from a narrative perspective, do you have any tips or advice on how to cut a good scene or how to grab people's attention? I know that's a really broad question, but I'm really just looking for some small takeaways for people to go like, oh, okay, cool. Let me think about that a little bit. Like, what are you looking for in a scene to make it really grab somebody's attention?
Emotions, you've got to play on a viewer's emotions, whether that's a fear or intrigue, or, you need to excite them, or you could be funny and comical and bring and draw them in with comedy. That's always a good way. But something, off of the top of a piece is always important to grab a viewer's attention. Maybe that's a tease of what's to come. That's it. I think it all depends on what it is you're providing and the length of it. If it's a long piece, a tease to get them interested. Why are they about to watch a 30-minute long
For sure
piece of media? And then suspense. Keep viewers in suspense until there's a payoff. So set up, suspense, and payoff. If they know what's coming and you've already answered their questions, you've lost them. So keeping them in suspense until the end of the piece, and if that's and that all depends on what is your story, right?
For sure.
Some stories, something that's more of a 3-act structure story, and some things are just information. Some pieces might be mostly information or what have you. But if maybe your tease at the top says stay tuned to the end, and we'll tell you how your business can benefit from X, Y, or Z.
I think that's great advice, though, actually, because what you see a lot of times is everybody's just got a camera and a microphone, and I've got a product launch, and I do a 30-second thing showing you the product. Who cares? Nobody's going to watch it. But if I make it funny, or if I make it engaging, or if I'm like, here's why this is the worst product ever, watch till the end, but at the end, it's really the best product ever. People love that stuff. Mr. Beast has made a ton of money off that kind of stuff. So, why not relate that to business? It's good stuff.
You got any other tips for us in the B2B world that we can implement to make our product a little bit better, a little bit more artistic?
How do we make it more Hollywood, Brad? Come on, you're the Hollywood guy.
Hollywood Brad.
Think about story, story first. The information is not as interesting as a story. So if you have a story to tell, beginning, a middle, and an end, think about what you're trying to do. That's going to engage a viewer more than just, here's a laundry list of information. If it's something I could just read off a page, it might not be worth having a video.
Yeah, we should just pull that. That's a great soundbite.
Yeah.
Video is a visual and audio medium. You've got to use those two things to, you got your dialogue, but think about everything else that you can show visually. Music is very important for media. Very important. If you've got terrible music, you've got terrible music.
Yeah, that's what creates the emotion, right? That's what makes it feel a certain way.
Along with your story, you're using the music to cue emotions along the way.
Do you use
a ride?
Do you use music from a music library, or do you work with composers that help you create better music? Okay.
It all depends on the job, the show. A lot of companies, it's pretty strictly just a library. We use a library called Extreme very often. And when I work on a Netflix show, they have their own huge, giant library that I can pull from.
Really? Wow, that's pretty cool.
It's proprietary. It's a very cool search and really cool tool to download library music. Sometimes, very rarely, something needle drop, but most reality shows don't have the budget for needle drop, like actual, an artist's
Yeah.
popular artist music. And then sometimes we use a composer. On the survival show I did called Outlast, we used a composer who did a great job coming up with they probably ended up being about 10% of the show was their music, but their music, we had a lot of different stems and we could use different parts of it. So I could come in with just the vocal of the stem in an area to communicate an emotion. And then in another area, use the full stem, the full mix for.
That also creates a nice through line, which is something we should talk about maybe in another episode, Trae, about like branding from an audio perspective, like being consistent in your usage of audio and how you create those through lines in the stories with audio. Cause I think that's super important. And it's not something we talk about a ton because we are typically pretty restricted on budgets and we have to go to stock music libraries and find stuff. It's very rare that we get a budget to go create some, audible brand for somebody or some piece of music that we can use throughout the series like that. That's something we should
with catalog music like that, you can find something.
Yeah.
That maybe it's an instrumentation that you can repeat. Maybe that's when the logo for the brand comes up.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not proprietary and unique just to that particular brand. Ideally, a brand would invest in a jingle, so to speak, their own.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you would invest in a graphic design for your brand name, you'd also want something, how are you going to present that brand when you present it visually, in the video medium.
So would you say that this library Extreme is your favorite, or is it just the one you end up using a lot?
Literally just the one I end up using the most because I don't have any say in the music. I'm not involved in pre-production. I'm only, a small part of the big process. Yeah, the producers are in the network. They're all coming up with that, and usually it has a lot to do with budget.
Yeah.
I do think that's a great idea, though, is investing in an audio for your company. Even
tag
Yeah,
I agree. And it's
that's
not
one
like
thing that we haven't done, but we should look into.
we have everybody in house is a musician, and I've got a full studio in my house. Corey's got a full studio in his house. Nate's got a full studio in his house. Like, there's no reason we couldn't do some of that stuff. It's just, I think it's just finding the time and the budget to do that. Actually, did you know, Trae, that Brad and I were in bands together for, gosh, I don't know, 10, 15 years together.
Really?
Brad's an outstanding bass player.
So was this like bubblegum pop?
Yeah. Well, actually, he was in a pop band in LA after he left our metal band in Austin.
Yep.
That is true. And they had much more success than we did here. So
Not
I think,
really.
well, you came back one year for
Bars.
like he came back here for South by one year. I was like, what do you mean you're playing South by? You're in my town now. And he brought his LA band out here to play South by. I was like, no, dude.
That's awesome.
It's so funny, man. But it's good stuff. Well, dude, I don't know, Trae, if you got any closing thoughts, but I could go on for hours because I love talking about this stuff. I love talking to Brad, and it's like so impressive to me what he's done with his career. And from, watching him render stuff out for like 4 days on the computer at the duplex we shared that I couldn't touch. He's like, don't touch this. I'm rendering something out. And I was like, okay, man. And couldn't go in there and do anything on the computer to where he is now is like, it's pretty awesome. And I owe a lot to him too for getting my foot in the door in the industry. But any closing thoughts from either one of you guys from a B2B perspective, from a storytelling perspective, from an editing perspective that we can leave people with just a couple of tips when they're creating content, just some best practices or tips? Don't jump at once.
I'm going to take away like Brad's, use a story. Like if you can write it down on your website, then it shouldn't be in the video necessarily. I'm going to do the think about your music and create a brand, like use music to create branding for your for your company or product. And I am going to be really curious along with Brad about like how AI changes our workflows over the next 5 years, because I feel like after they develop these ethical models and we can create legal images and voices and workflows with this, then it's really going to change what we do rapidly, because it already seems like it's trickling into what we do.
It's very exciting. It's very exciting. And I'm sure that if you can ask me that question in 2 years, how has your particular job changed? You know, couldn't tell you that it changed that much as of now, but it will. It will. These tools will become more and more involved in my workflow. So it's very exciting.
Okay, well, put it on your calendar.
Office
May
hours
9th,
2 years from now.
2027. Just know that we're booking you right now, Brad. Editing AI expert, Brad Haley.
Yeah, great.
Fantastic.
Dude, thank you so much, Brad. I appreciate you taking the time to hang with us for a little bit. It's awesome to talk to you about this stuff.
No worries. I hope viewers have some takeaway from this.
All right. I'm going to play our music and then we're going to get out of here.
All right.
See you later, everybody.
Get my coffee ready.
See you
One last sip. One last sip.
Oh, you guys, I just got the solo cup, like the redneck over here.
What are you doing?
Well, it's noon there. You're having a beer.
All right.
Are we
Bye,
offline?
y'all. No, not yet.
Well, I can't say anything nasty then.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.